Well, welcome back to Growing Closer to God. I'm so excited to be with you today and introduce you to a friend of mine, Jermain Johnson. He is part of the church next door, and we've really grown to love the Lord together, what God has done in our lives and bringing it together. So, Jermain, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Doyle.
I was wondering if you would take a moment and just tell us briefly what it is you do, a little bit about your family and your life.
So currently I am a analyst at a local company in procurement. Small family, there's four of us in total. Yes, four of us in total. Grew up here in Columbus on the south side. So I've been here all my life, although I have traveled. And, I found myself here at the church next door.
How did that happen? Tell us a little bit about how the Lord stepped into your life a couple years ago.
Okay, so I grew up in the church. I often make this joke saying that I was going to church before I was born, right? Because my mother was always going to church since she was a youth. And when you, well, at least for me, when you grow up in the church, it becomes an activity that your parents take you to, right? You go to school, that's an activity. So it was just a place that you went, that you did things. And I don't know that necessarily I made any connection. I knew that you go here, there's a guy called Jesus and you'll want to go to heaven one day. But there was never, any real connection to, as we come to learn about the relationship that you grow to have. And I think, I lived literally next door to the church. And, something happened a couple years back with my career, and I wasn't happy where I was. And I wasn't executing at a high level according to what I wanted, according to my own expectations. And I had decided that I was going to find a new job. And I devoted every bit of my intellect and my energy into finding this new job. And
were you going to church at that time?
I was not. Now, The Spirit had been telling me, you should go to church. I'm like, I got it. But as soon as I accomplished this thing, I was so dedicated. I would get up. It was like a second job. So I would be up on Sundays, scouring the internet, submitting resumes, etc. But no, I had the prompting to go, and I had little excuse because I had one that I could literally walk to.
Yeah.
But in that, I had really come to the end of myself.
Yeah.
Everything I tried did not work. And, in that moment, the Lord had showed me something where I did get an opportunity that was above and beyond what I had planned for myself. And then that gave me pause. I was like, oh, okay, I need to pay attention. Not necessarily because the job was so wonderful, which it was, but I had recognized that I had limitations, and then I needed the Lord to take me further. So he said, why don't you, attend that church that you had come to a couple of times. And so I started going, and then
to here,
yeah. So I came here, and I was just going to fall into the same routine.
Do you remember your first time in this room?
Yeah.
Where'd you sit?
I don't remember where I sat. Probably in the back.
Yeah.
Most likely. Get in quick, leave quick. And, I tried to fall into that same routine, let me get my church.
So what you're telling me is God can speak to those people that slip in the back and slip out quickly?
He can if you are ready to hear, right? And I think I was at that point where I was ready to hear him, if that makes sense. And so like I said, I was going to fall into that same routine of just going on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working. It's not that it wasn't working, but the fear was like, you need to go into this thing. And you guys had these things called small groups, which is a term I had never heard. And through these small groups, that's when it's kind of like the veil was lifted. It was two things I distinctly remember. in my first small group, because I started going to like 2 or 3 in a week. I remember we had went through James, and then we immediately went into Romans. And I think Romans 9 kind of floored me. It really humbled me, and I got to understand, God's sovereignty through that. And then my other group, I learned that if you want to hear God's voice, that you need to be quiet and let him speak, because at that time there was never any silence. Like, I always had music playing, always had something, earbuds in. And so it's like, how do I hear the Lord speak? I was like, well, you're never quiet long enough for this thing to happen. And so through those 2 opportunities, that's where I really started to grow.
So let me review real quickly, okay? What I hear you saying is you grew up in church, and God was this familiar thing,
Right.
but somehow you missed out on the relationship part of it.
Correct.
And it was in the middle of this crisis of trying to figure out your career and looking for a job. You decided, well, maybe if I want to get a job, I need to go to church, because...
Well, I wouldn't say that. It was a crisis of like a life crisis, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was at the point to where, okay, whatever the next thing is has to be, like, I'm not 20 anymore. So whatever the thing is, so it was a huge deal. It wasn't just about a job. It was, I am so unhappy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And when you're that unhappy in a job, and I have an expectation of quality. It's harder to put forth that quality. So I said, I need to remove myself because I'm not being fair to this current employer. So it was just like, oh yeah, I want a new job. It was, whatever you're going to do next has to be the thing that's going to carry you through the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So, but I thought I could do it under my own strength. And I was just so defeated because I just kept getting rejected no matter how much time and effort I put in. And I was just fine. I was like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, whatever you want. If you want me to stay, I'll stay. If you want something else, and then boom.
That's good.
Things happen. So, I don't necessarily want to make it about the job, but that was the thing I was so focused on.
Well, but God used that pressure in your life to get your attention.
Right. Yeah.
And so what was the shift? What took place, and what did that look like, in case someone else is, trying to figure out, well, I've been like Jermain. I've gone to church all my life, but I don't feel anything from God. So
the shift for me is you start to understand the things that you read in this book in a way that you're like, how did I miss that? And not in the way that once you read it now, be like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I read that. It was, this thing has been on my shelf for 20 years, 30 years. And how did I just miss this simple passage? So that's one thing, like, the word really starts to open up and you start to understand, and it's more than just, and you don't just see it as a thing that's going to tell you to be good, right? This is it's there to tell you how to remove yourself from this slavery of your own will that you tether yourself to. Like, this is going to show you how to be free from that. And then also what happens is, I think in a sense we can get really used to this material world where we can touch, taste, and feel. But once you open yourself up to the Spirit, you start to experience spiritual things. And it's, I'll say, interesting. You'll start to have promptings to do certain things, and the Lord will start to use you in certain situations, and you kind of get to be the co-pilot for these really cool things that happen. And so that's the kind of the transformation, and it could be, for some people it's really quick and they jump right in. For other people's, it can be a bit, not unsettling in a bad way, but you have to get used to it. Yeah.
I've watched you really grow, because you went from being someone who kind of sat in the back corner and was very quiet and just checking it all out to, I know on Sunday nights you'd come and you begin to help me and videotape and do little things. And tell me, what is it you're doing now to serve the Lord, to kind of
So-
spread his hope?
So I thought about that, and when we talk about, what's your ministry, first off, I've decided that, I think the series, about Thy Will Be Done.
Yeah.
So that's my ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the Lord wants me to do, that's what I'm going to do. A while back, He had asked me to start a Bible study, a family Bible study, which, I think maybe for some people may not be that unusual,
Yeah.
but for me to lead a Bible study on a Friday evening,
But you're talking about, I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
because this has gone on for a while. This is between you and your mom and dad and your siblings.
Yes.
And I don't know, do you have nieces and nephews
No.
that come? Okay.
Well, I have a little nephew, but he's too young to really, he's like 2.
Yeah.
But to spend 2 hours on a Friday evening discussing Leviticus or Revelations is not, if you had told me that's what I would be doing, I would have been like.
But what's it done for your family?
I think it's because what I wanted to kind of do is I wanted to do for them what like the small groups had done for me.
Yeah.
And once you get into like a small, intimate setting like that, it forces you to really examine your relationship with others and your relationship to the Holy Spirit and your relationship to the text, right? And to also give you an opportunity to share and learn from others. And so I wanted to, and that had been such a benefit to me, I wanted to bring that to the family setting. And so I think it's given us a freedom to talk about, and not that we didn't talk about it, but we would talk about other things.
Yeah.
How was work? And that would be, those would be the extent of the conversations. And those are important conversations, but those are what I would say are crucial. And so we started to talk more about, hey, this is what the Lord did for me. Hey, I read this. What do you think about this? Hey, the Spirit showed me this today. And so those type of conversations started to happen, which was really cool.
Well, I just think I'm really thankful for all the relationships that God gave me before COVID and before riots.
Yeah.
Because of those relationships, we were able to have conversations in this season that'd be really hard to engage afterwards.
Right.
And it's like God brought your whole family back together to walk with Him in a tough season. So you already had those bonds ahead of time. I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and this was about a year ahead, and I had no idea why.
That's right.
And it's like I said, it was every Friday for a year.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
And you guys have kept meeting all through all this season?
Yeah, I think we're doing like once a month now, just because of the we have to do it via video, like we're doing video chats, but it's still happening.
That's cool.
I've picked up. I started a small group, and so like there's more time devoted to kind of like that type of thing. So, but no, it's still happening.
You started a small group besides the one with your family.
Yes. So
and how's that going?
It's going well. Again, it was one of those things that the Lord had asked me to do, and being me, I have to make sure. And so, and I'm working on that to respond more quickly. But I always want to make sure I'm not doing anything out of my own ego.
Yeah.
And so I have to be really cautious. And I think the Lord has allowed me to know myself in that way, to know that could be a stumbling block for me. So I have to always make sure that, all right, am I actually doing this because I think this would be great for me and for me to be able to just have people sit and listen to me jabber for an hour? Or is this something that's going to be able to be used to glorify, His kingdom in the end? So once I got that confirmation from several people, independently, it was like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
And that's why you're part of the body of Christ.
Correct.
Because, well, I would have told you, I think you're a very humble man, and you're so kind, and you have a gentleness about your spirit, and
Thank you.
That's why I wanted the people to get to know you. But I think also, you have great people in your life.
I do.
I love you, man.
Thank you.
For those, this may be a harsh question. I don't think I told you in advance, but I know you can handle it. So before you kind of had this crisis, do you think if you had died, you'd have gone to heaven?
You know, I've answered this question before, and knowing what I know now, I would have to say absolutely not.
Wow.
Yeah. And that is what was humbling about like just going through like Romans and all those things, is just how far away I was and thinking I was really close.
So do you remember a day when you decided to cross that line with God? What did it look like?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like when was the day that you went from just assuming that God's got me covered and not really having a relationship with Him, and then when did you really get it that you knew God loved you and that Jesus died for you?
I mean, again, it was in that small group, because you know, what you'll learn is that through no effort of your own, you are saved.
Yeah.
And even your greatest effort is as filthy rags. So it was like, you know, before I was like, of course I'm going to heaven. I'm awesome, right? I make mistakes, but
That's right.
I'm pretty good.
I'm not
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a serial killer.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but once you move past that and you really start to take in how good God's grace and mercy is, and how important it is, and how precious a gift it is. And I couldn't even say I was taking it for granted, because I had never taken advantage. I just assumed, okay, my mom, my family went to church, like my whole family. I mean, we went to a church when I was a youth where my whole cousins, aunts, uncles, grandmothers, we all went to the same church, and it was just, you just assumed.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous thing. And I had assumed without reading anything.
Yeah.
I had never dedicated myself to reading any of this. Whatever was said on the Sunday was like, cool, I'm good.
That's right. I got my little dose.
Yeah, I got my dose for the day.
It's my vitamin.
Yeah.
It's my spiritual go juice.
Yeah. So that was the moment where it just clicked. Yeah. And then once you start listening and watching the Spirit move, and you start to move in that, then you're in. And then you never want that to not happen. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You don't want to have the Spirit not talk to you and say, hey, I want you to, you know, and it's not necessarily audible, but it's if you read the Word, then you know the lanes that are appropriate.
That's right.
If that makes sense.
It's amazing how just reading your Bible every day,
right,
praying, and giving some space just to worship God in song or from your heart, a few words, just those three little things makes God real.
Absolutely. And I had dedicated so much time to other things before. And so I couldn't have the excuse, well, I don't really have time to. It's like, no, you have time. You've dedicated a lot of time to, movies, television, traveling, whatever. Wow. So you have the hours in the day. And particularly now, we definitely have the hours in the day. So there are very few excuses now.